Less noise, more signal. This is Context Required, finding clarity in the age of noise.
Welcome to Context Required, the podcast dedicated to finding clarity in an age of noise. I'm your host, Carlo Thompson, and today we're diving into episode 5 of our series, The Distraction Machine. The title of today's episode is Manufacturing Culture Wars, and I want you to hold that word manufacturing in your mind for the next several minutes, because it's doing a lot of work. We're not asking whether cultural conflict exists. It does. We're not asking whether the issues are real. Many of them are. What we are asking is a much more uncomfortable question. Who builds the stage those battles are fought on, and why? Over the course of this episode, we're going to trace a pipeline, from money, to media, to the outrage you feel scrolling your phone at midnight. We're going to look at documented history, not conspiracy theory. We're going to follow the incentive trail. And we're going to give you tools, practical, actionable tools, for separating the signal from the noise. Because here's the uncomfortable truth this series keeps returning to. The things consuming your attention may not be the things that actually determine your quality of life. And if you're spending your energy fighting your neighbor over symbols, you may be missing the systems that are quietly picking both your pockets at the same time. That's what this episode is about. Let's get into it. Look at the left side of this frame. That red, chaotic collage, breaking news, outrage alerts, live updates, screaming faces. That's the noise. That's what's fighting for your attention every single day. Now look at the right side. Clean lines. A building under construction. The architecture of something real, being built. That's the signal. And the caption says it plainly. The world is changing while you're arguing online. Think about the timeline of the last decade. While the internet erupted over pronoun debates, I was quietly eliminating entire job categories. White collar, blue collar, doesn't matter. While we obsessed over celebrity feuds and viral cancellations, trade policy was being restructured in ways that reshaped global supply chains, and the effects are landing in your town right now. The distraction machine isn't just noise. It's noise with a purpose. It keeps your eyes on the spectacle so you miss the system. It keeps your emotional energy spent on things you cannot change, so you have nothing left for the things you can. The goal of this podcast, and this episode specifically, is to help you notice when you're being redirected. Because you can't fight a machine you can't see. I want you to sit with that question for a moment. What if the things you're angriest about were chosen for you, not fabricated? The slide is careful here. The issues are often real. The feelings are genuine. If you're angry about economic insecurity, that's real. If you're angry about cultural change, those feelings are real. We're not dismissing any of that. What we're questioning is the prominence. Why does identity conflict dominate your feed? Why is your timeline full of pronoun debates and statue controversies, but largely silent on wage theft, which costs American workers more annually than all property crime combined? Why do you know every detail about a viral cancellation but can't name the 5 corporations that control your local media? It's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. The image on this slide shows a man alone, lit only by his phone screen, while a puppet master's shadow looms behind him. That's not hyperbole. That's the architecture of modern attention. Algorithms don't just reflect what you care about. They shape it. They amplify what keeps you engaged, which turns out to be whatever makes you angry, afraid, or tribally activated. The most dangerous part? You can be genuinely enraged about something that was engineered for you to be enraged about. Both things are simultaneously true. And that's what makes this system so effective. This slide gives us a framework that I think is one of the most useful tools in this entire episode. There are 2 columns that matter, not left and right, not liberal and conservative. What matters is what is present versus what is absent. The noise. What is present? Identity-based grievances. High emotional voltage. Tribal. Zero-sum framing. These are the characteristics of the content that dominates our public discourse. Culture war. Bathroom debates. Statue removal. Cancel culture. Symbolic battles. These stories share a common architecture. They're about who we are, not what we share. They pit groups against each other, in ways where one side's gain feels like another side's loss. The silence. What is absent? Economic framing. Class analysis. Shared material interests. Notice how rarely our mainstream political conversation asks, who owns what? Who controls what? Who profits from what? Notice how seldom we ask, regardless of our cultural differences, what do working people of every background actually have in common? The insight at the bottom of this slide cuts right to it. We fight over symbols while agreeing on economics. Poll after poll shows that Americans across the political spectrum agree on raising the minimum wage, on lowering prescription drug costs, on corporate accountability. But those issues don't trend. They don't go viral. And that is not an accident. Some of you might be thinking, this sounds like a conspiracy theory. So let's be absolutely clear. This is documented history. The timeline on this slide covers 3 well-sourced historical examples of cultural division being used as an economic tool. The 1960s-70s, the Southern Strategy. Political strategist Kevin Phillips explicitly articulated a blueprint for using cultural resentment, racial anxiety, regional identity, social grievance, to realign working-class white voters away from economic populism and toward a coalition that served very different financial interests. This isn't speculation. Phillips wrote about it. Nixon strategist Lee Atwater described it on tape. Early 20th century, corporate anti-labor. For over a century, corporations and their allies systematically pitted ethnic groups against one another to break strikes and prevent unionization. Irish against black workers. Eastern Europeans against established immigrants. The strategy was consistent. If workers are fighting each other over identity, they can't organize together over wages. 1971, the Powell Memo. Future Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell wrote a private memo to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, laying out a coordinated strategy for corporate America to dominate media, education, and the courts. It was a call to arms, and it was answered. The think tank infrastructure and media ecosystem we live with today was substantially built in response to it. The bottom line of this slide: the most effective tool against class solidarity is cultural division. That's not a tweet. That's history. How does it work today? It's not a shadowy cabal. It's a system of convergent interests. Dark money and donor spending have increased 1,000% since 2010. That capital flows into think tanks to create framing, media to provide amplification, and algorithms to optimize for engagement. The machine is a literal engine designed to turn financial capital into cultural conflict. The end product of this billion-dollar industry? You, angry at your neighbor, while the money moves silently in the background. Imagine a filter. Thousands of issues go in the top. The system asks one question: does it divide the working class? If the answer is yes, like identity or cultural grievances, it gets amplified and sent to your feed. If the answer is no, if it's something 70% of Americans agree on, like raising the minimum wage or lowering healthcare costs, it gets suppressed. This is why popular economic policies rarely trend, but symbolic battles never end. The machine is also a reframing engine. It takes a hard economic reality and translates it into a cultural threat. Employer exploitation of labor is reframed as an immigration or cultural threat. Spiraling healthcare costs are reframed as freedom versus government control. The housing crisis is reframed as generational laziness. By changing the label, the system ensures we never address the root cause, because we're too busy arguing over the brand. Cui bono? Who benefits? For corporations, workers fighting each other don't unionize. For politicians, cultural tweets are cheaper than policy solutions. For the wealthy, class-based politics threaten assets, while cultural politics do not. For the media, conflict drives the engagement that sells ads. This is the division dividend. Everyone at the top gets a payout, when those at the bottom stay at each other's throats. This is the distraction gap. Since 1970, worker productivity has soared by 250%, but real wages have stayed almost flat. In that same time, union membership plummeted from 33% to about 6%. We have been working harder and producing more wealth than ever before, but we aren't seeing it in our bank accounts. The system ensures you never notice this, because you're too busy winning a culture war against an opponent who likely shares your exact same economic struggle. So how do we break the spell? Use this litmus test. Next time you see a viral outrage, ask, who benefits if I am angry at this specific group? What do I have in common materially with my supposed opponent? Why is this everywhere right now? Is it organic, or is it being manufactured to move the needle away from a bigger issue? The most radical thing you can do today is refuse to let your attention be captured. Reject the zero-sum frame. Seek out cross-partisan spaces that focus on material issues like housing, wages, and care. Most importantly, recognize that your neighbor's struggle is your struggle. When we stop fighting over symbols, we can start fighting for our shared future. The culture war is real, the feelings are genuine, and the stakes can be high. We aren't saying ignore injustice, but recognize that the volume is controlled by those who benefit from your division. Don't let the noise blind you to the economic machinery operating in the background. Stop arguing. Start understanding. Your brain has a limit, and the system knows it. Next week, we explore the bandwidth problem. We'll look at how our information environment is designed to systematically exhaust your cognitive resources, making it physically and mentally impossible to understand complex systems. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening to Context Required. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Remember, the signal is there if you know where to look. Stop arguing. Start understanding.